Everyone, welcome to the developer call for Hummingbot version 0.35. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes to give everyone a little bit of time to join. If you like, please, you can write something about yourself on the chat pane in Zoom. It's always, we're a global team. We have some members of our team on and a couple of external developers. This call will be recorded, so we'll make it available on YouTube afterwards. But if you like, please write something in the chat and introduce yourself. And you can also ask any questions about Hummingbot, what's in this release, or any other technical questions, and we'll try to answer it during this call. Well, actually, why don't we get started? Since we'll just let everyone join. Might be more people joining, but let's get started. So 0.35 was a maintenance release. So first, I'll just present kind of like how this works, and then we'll go into a bit more detail. So before we start, a disclaimer: this demo is for instructional and educational purposes only. We're not giving any legal, tax, or financial advice, and every user is responsible for their own use of configuration of Hummingbots, as well as participation in liquidity mining. So what are we going to discuss today? So first, about these developer calls. We started this about 3 or 4 releases ago, and the overall idea is to give our more technical members of the community more insight into what the changes are to the open source code base with every release. Typically, we have lots of issues on GitHub. So I think we have like over 200 open issues right now. And every release, what we try to do as a team is we try to identify the top priorities from a business standpoint, and then also merge them with what the top needs are from the community, from the open issues. And overall, we just try to take the finite bandwidth we have in every monthly release cycle, and we try to knock out the top issues on GitHub. Some of these are kind of like more internal business requirements, because we do sustain Hummingbot by building connectors and strategies for external partners. So there's that, and then we kind of balance some of that work with work that we're doing on behalf of the open source community in terms of fixing the most like pressing bugs or adding more enhancements. So you'll see some of that. This particular release was more of a maintenance release, because in 0.34, the last one, we added a few big connectors. So we added connectors to DYDX, to Terra and Uniswap, as well as for Binance Futures. So in 0.35, we concentrated mainly on improving the usability and fixing bugs with these newer connectors and some of the other ones. And we've also tried to, make like fix some of the minor issues with the clients related to usability. So first I'll go into kind of what those changes were, and then I'll go to a bit of a demo on the new perpetual market making strategy on Binance Futures. And then finally, I'll take some questions. So yeah, let's talk about what's in this release first. One second. So we finished the release notes. So I'll show you the release notes in a second and go over those. Those are actually loading right now. But in the meantime, let me discuss, just go over quickly the closed issues in GitHub and show everyone what those were. So even though 0.35 was a maintenance release and it spanned the holiday season, so we didn't have that many days availability for the team to work on issues. However, we still managed to close a good, probably about roughly 20 to 30 pull requests. A bunch of these were kind of minor fixes. For instance, improving logging for the new protocol connectors. There was an issue where there were certain trading pairs that have the Australian dollar as a core currency, and those weren't showing up in the autocomplete when users create a trading pair. So that is now supported. In addition, there were also a bunch of other minor issues. For instance, the cross-exchange market making strategy was now working in paper trade mode, which now it does. In addition, in the past, whenever you imported or created a strategy, there was this start command that was auto-filled, and users could fill that in and basically just enter it to start. We found that a lot of times users wanted to check out the configuration, they wanted to do other things besides just starting the strategy immediately. So people would end up just deleting that start command and putting something new. So now we have removed that start command, and so that should work now. Finally, a couple other minor issues. We also added the ability to basically, yeah. We also there's also some issues with multiple order levels. Before, order optimization would only work with order level equal to 1. Now it works with multiple order levels as well. And we've also made some other minor changes. I think the release notes should now be working. Let me just see if we have those up and running. Yes. So this is not published yet, but this will be published tonight when we do the release for 0.35. So here are the release notes for 0.35. We've also made a bit of an effort to make the release notes a little more readable this time around. So here are the main changes in this release. The main changes, I would say, from a product perspective, was we made substantial improvements to the new Binance Futures connector and the new perpetual marketing strategy. I'll demo some of this later on, but essentially in the first version, we added the ability to basically just to market make on Binance Futures for perpetual swaps. But after you create a position in the last release, there's no way to manage it afterwards. In 0.35, we added parameters that allow users to automatically manage created derivative positions. So for example, you can either select profit taking, where the bot will basically set spreads that will allow once the position is created, you can now take a profit on that position, or you can do what's called trailing stops, which are set spreads which allow the bot to close losses in a different way, close positions in a different way. And we can discuss that a bit more in the demo later on. In addition, we also increased we made some changes to improve usability for the new protocol connectors. For example, for the Uniswap connector, when it finds the right price, it now uses dynamic routes, which allow for better trade execution. Also, we added logging and fix a few display issues as well. Finally, as I mentioned, we removed the default start command. We also now users can now run the bounce limit command and kind of use it and disable this command from the client instead of having to use the configuration file. A few of the minor things, as I mentioned earlier, order optimization. The order optimization parameter in pure market making now works with multiple order levels. We're also handling, if you run the history command and you've paid out multiple fees in different tokens, we now split that out and show you the different fee tokens used when you run the history command. And finally, there's a few bug fixes that we fix in this particular release. So overall, this release, there were a few kind of core improvements, but overall, this was more of a maintenance release for the team. So next, actually, is there any questions about this particular release? If not, I'll move on and demo how the new perpetual market making features work on Binance Futures. Okay, so so over here, I have the bot running, and this is actually running on the perpetual market making strategy. So let me show you first creating strategy and how it will work. So so this is 0.35, and so if you create a strategy, you can pick the new perpetual market making strategy, and the only exchanges that this is currently supporting is Binance Futures, which is called Binance_perpetual in Hummingbot, and in the future we will be integrating with more other exchanges where you can trade perpetuals. So just like other connectors, the first step is selecting the trading pair, which I'll pick BTC USD. Now, one of the main differences between perpetual exchanges and spot exchanges is the ability to use leverage. So on Binance, you can do up to 75% leverage. Here, I will just use 1x. And then now there are two modes that you can run this in. There's one-way mode, which means that your positions are only tracked against positions in this particular market, or you can use hedge mode, which means your positions across all markets are cross-margined. So overall, we recommend users basically stick with one mode or another. If you switch between them, you're going to see kind of like weird errors appear because Binance only kind of like has to manage positions between them. So overall, we recommend that you read the documentations on the differences between these two modes and select the mode that you want to use and stick with that mode. So here I'll just stick with one-way mode. The spread parameters are very similar to what they are for spot exchanges. So I'll put 0.5 on both sides. And finally, order refresh time, also very similar. I'll refresh the orders every 30 seconds. Amount for BTC per order. So I'll just put close to the minimum for demo purposes. Now, position management is an important part of this. And so there's two ways that you could potentially manage these. So either profit taking or trailing stop. Now, one thing to note is that because we just launched this strategy in this connector, the documentation we currently have doesn't have a lot of detail about how to answer these questions yet. This is temporary, but in the meantime, we ask users to look at the Binance Futures documentation to understand how to use these features. For example, if you want to know how to set trailing stop, for example, there's an article on the Binance Futures documentation on what is a trailing stop order that describes how it works and also how what the parameters associated with trailing stop are. And the two main parameters associated with trailing stop are callback rate and the activation price. So if I select trailing stop here, now we can set basically the spread that sets the activation price. So this is basically the activation price, but I'll enter it in spread terms. So I'll put let's say 1%, 1% from the initial price. And finally, this question: at what spread away from trailing peak price do you want the positions to remain open before they're closed? This is the callback rate question. And so I'll put something small here, like 0.01 for the callback rate. And then finally, what order type do you want to use for closing position? I'll also use that. I'll use a limit order for now. So this is a very light example to show you how to set the trailing stop or the profit-taking parameter and how to answer those questions. Overall, because we don't have complete documentation yet for this strategy, we recommend that users consult the Binance Futures documentation and read about trailing stops and profit-taking parameters in order to use it most effectively with Hummingbot. So once I have, so here are the kind of like the combined all the parameters that I'm currently using for this strategy. So to summarize, we're running this on the Binance Futures exchange in the BTC USDT pair with 1x leverage and in one-way mode. And we're using a trailing stop to manage positions after they're created and so forth. So once you start the strategy, just like any other strategy with Hummingbot, it will start to basically create strategy, create orders, and it'll let you know if an order has been filled and a position has been created. The difference, one difference between spot and perpetual exchanges is that we will have basically we will have transactions, positions. So once you get an order filled, you will have a positions created. So let me stop the bot again and start it again. Okay. So I'm actually not sure why it's not creating. Let me just stop this and import my old strategy that I created earlier. There we go. So one difference between the perpetual strategies and the normal strategies is that once you've created a position, you actually have a position to manage as opposed to just getting a trade filled. So if you run status, you'll notice that there's a positions section for if a position is created. So what that means is right now I have one buy order on the order book. If this order is filled, then there will be a position created, and then position management takes over. So here we go. Here's an example of a filled buy order. So I run status now. You'll see that there's now a position here. The position here is tells you the entry price, the amount, the leverage, and the unrealized P&L. So once position has been created, then your position management parameters, either trailing stop or profit taking, will now manage this position. A position, once the position has been created, and also once it's filled, both are recorded as entries in the history, the local SQLite database that's used by the history command. However, one thing to note is that currently the history command, if you just run history as is, you won't really see much. The reason is because there's a leverage component to all of these derivative trades. And so in order to calculate the P&L, we need to incorporate that leverage value. Currently, our local database doesn't have a column for that leverage value. So that's why currently the trades are recorded. However, the P&L is not calculated for derivative trades. If you want to see what the trades are, you can do history dash days, because I've been running this bot for the last about a day or so. And then if you run it in verbose mode, you'll see basically all the trades you did on that connector, and you can also export them you can also export the trades for this change, and then so if I say Binance trades, then you can log all the trades at CSV and calculate the P&L yourself. So this is temporary change. In the future, we will add this leverage column and add P&L calculation for perpetual connectors as well as for spot connectors. Another workaround for now is that you can also look at your trade history on Binance. So, for example, in this test bot, we have you can also look at the Binance history connector here and look at the trades on Binance, and then use the realized profit column on Binance to determine what your P&L actually is. And in the future, we'll have this calculation inside the client as well. So overall, I would say this connector and this strategy is still fairly basic, but we intend on making improvements to this over the next few releases. Some of the things we're planning to do are adding the P&L calculation to history is definitely one important thing. We'll also write up more documentation on kind of the differences between profit-taking mode versus trailing stop, and also on how to use the different parameters associated with each mode in the documentation. Currently, if you look at the perpetual market making strategy on our docs, it does explain what each of the parameters does, in a more basic level. But you can also consult the Binance docs to get more information about these. One more housekeeping note: the Binance perpetual getting the API key is slightly could be different from your normal Binance API key. It could be the same, but basically when you create the API key for Binance or for Binance futures, the API key will have certain checkboxes that tell you whether you want to use this key for margin or not. So what's important is that you select that the API key is usable for margin trading. So in our exchange connector documentation, we have an example of kind of this little image that shows you that which boxes you need to check in order to create an API key that can be used for Binance futures. And then finally, this perpetual market making strategy is really only scratching the surface of what's possible with derivative exchanges. One of the strategies we'll work on in the next few releases is a strategy that allows users to arbitrage between a futures exchange like Binance Futures and a spot exchange like regular Binance. Doing this arbitrage is a little bit more complicated than normal arbitrage because number one, once you create a position on the Binance future side, you have to manage a position afterwards. And in addition, you also have to take into account funding rate, which may affect your P&L depending on how the funding rate moves around. So we're still kind of designing that strategy to take into account all these different, these different possibilities. And so we expect that that's spot perpetual arbitrage strategy to be released sometime in the next probably 2 or 3 months. Let's see, I think this is the main part of the demo that I wanted to give on Binance Futures. Do you guys have any questions about how the strategy works? Okay. All right, so moving on a bit. So basically, so now let me give you a preview of what we're doing in 0.336, the current release. So if you want to see what we're working on in 0.36, you can always go to the roadmap, the public roadmap, which is under the Hummingbot GitHub under projects and then roadmap. So it looks like we haven't updated this as we, for 0.36. This is actually because our, one of our team members that does this is actually out on paternity leave this week. But normally what we do is we basically update this board with the tickets we're working on in the current release and in the next release. So we haven't done so for 0.36 yet, but after probably about, just give us like probably a week or so, we will have the 0.36 cards here. In the meantime, I'll just go over what they are in terms of the open issues. We actually have some open pull requests right now that I can go over. So a few things. One of them is there's a bug in the Huobi connector that may cause orders to be left uncanceled, and so forth. We realized that it's actually an issue with us not using the kind of like a WebSocket API that gives user orders in Huobi. So we recently fixed this issue. Victor actually just fixed it about 4 hours ago. And once this pull request is merged in, we expect that the Huobi connector will work a lot better. This is scheduled for the 0.36 release. In addition, we're currently working on a connector for BitMax. BitMax is one of the newer exchanges that has become quite popular with various tokens that are listing on BitMax recently. And so we have a pretty good relationship with the folks over there. And so from a strategic perspective, we believe that it's valuable for both Hummingbot and the community to have a BitMax connector. So we have engaged Stephen Yoni, who's a longtime community member who built a number of other connectors for Hummingbot before, to work on the BitMax connector. It's currently in progress, and we expect it in either the February release or the March release. For KuCoin, there's a minor fix we're making with KuCoin now that should be also in the 0.36 release, in the February release. And one of the most important things we have for 0.36 for the February release is we're still testing this, but we think this will make a big change, because in the past, the trade history collected by Hummingbot sometimes didn't match what was on the exchanges themselves. And the reason is because we were relying upon the WebSocket feed, which might knock out or miss some trades if the network wasn't fully connected. So what we're doing in the next release is now for Binance and other exchanges, we are going to use the API to collect the trade history and reconcile that trade history that we pull from the exchange with what Hummingbot stores in the local database. So that should ensure that even if your network connection isn't perfect, the trade history reflected in the client is identical to what you have if you pull the exchange API. And the reason this is important is because we drive a lot of calculations based on your performance. For example, the kill switch, which stops your bot if you've made a certain profit or lost a certain amount. In addition, we also use things like we tracking balances, looking at the trade history. All this stuff is really important to get right. And so with this kind of like reconciliation using the exchange API, we think that in the next version of Hummingbot, this will be much better than it was in the past. In addition, there's also a few like longer term things we're working on. For example, we have a pull request from this is actually an engineer. One of the engineers on our liquidity mining infrastructure team, and he's developed an algorithm for kind of doing market making similar to kind of how it operates on an automatic market maker like Uniswap. So you can kind of like it's kind of like an inventory skew algorithm, but it kind of uses your balances to decide what spreads and what orders to create. So it's intended to simulate market making on an AMM like Uniswap or Balancer. So we're still working on that particular parameter, but we expect that to be in the February release as well. Finally, we are also tracking a few other kind of like pull requests that members of the community have submitted. For example, users have submitted connectors for Bitstamp, altmarkets.io, as well as Biaxi. So on some of these, we're kind of waiting for some of the, just give me a summary. For Biaxi, Biaxi is Biaxi, if you guys recall, they were in the initial governance votes that we did last November. And because of some issues with that release, we said that we would basically get all 3 connectors merged in. Currently, we're talking to the Biaxi team, and we're waiting for them to make some of the changes to this connector that will allow us to review it. Currently, there are some merge conflicts because we changed the connector design heavily recently. In addition, there's a couple other connectors people submitted, one for alt markets and another one for Bitstamp. For Bitstamp, we are currently talking to the exchange, and one of our most likely one of our team members will take over this connector from the community member who built it, and our team member will basically update the connector and get it up to spec. However, currently, because there are some technical limitations imposed by the Bitstamp API, we're currently trying to get in touch with someone over there to kind of work out some of these technical issues so that this connector can work just as well as our other connectors. And for all markets, we do plan on having another governance vote in the next few weeks to let the community decide, which exchange we should merge in next. So we expect alt markets, IDEX, and maybe 1 or 2 other exchanges. Toko Crypto to be in that governance vote. So overall, I would say, if you look at this board, we are our goal is really to try to connect Hummingbot to as many exchanges and protocols as possible, while still maintaining a level of quality that allows everyone to use the existing connectors. So it's kind of a balancing act between, really adding new connectors and increasing the reach of Hummingbot versus, fixing bugs and, maintaining the existing connectors and strategies and just making sure that people can use them. So that's kind of like the balancing act that we do every release to shed more light on our process. And one of our goals for this year is to incorporate community feedback into that process and allow the community to really steer, the direction of Hummingbot codebase. So that's about it. Couple housekeeping things. We'll try to keep the documentation updated. I know the docs right now are a bit out of date, especially in terms of developing connectors and strategies. Unfortunately, this is just an area where we're limited by our bandwidth. We're very optimistic about how much we can take on every release, so we try to do a lot. And sometimes documentation becomes kind of like the piece that doesn't get as much attention as the actual code itself. However, we do recognize that people are relying upon this documentation to make updates. And I think once we kind of once our current engineers get more up to speed, we'll try to update these docs as soon as possible. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about kind of like how to make changes or how to develop, please ask us on Discord, and we'll try to answer any questions. So with that, I'm going to stop the sharing now and just open up the floor for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, please post them on the chat, and either myself or our other engineer on the call will try to answer them. Not surprisingly, there aren't that many today. Unfortunately, we didn't do a great job of marketing this particular call, but we'll try to do a better job in the future and give everyone more notice of when this call will be. But this will be recorded and published to YouTube afterwards. So we're hopeful that these types of calls, every release, will essentially help the community understand what's in every release, give them more insight into a specific feature that was in the release, and also just answer questions and try to help the community understand more about what we're trying to do at Hummingbot. So thank you all for participating, and and we'll see you next month.